Oh, hey, take number 8. Seriously, you guys, it's take number 8. So, nothing but technical issues today. But there was nothing technical about me getting up early this morning and getting out and doing some work and feeling accomplished about what I did. That's why I've got this seemingly white t-shirt on that might look a little dusty and dirty because like I said, I got up, I did what I needed to do, got it done. I feel good about myself. I feel accomplished so I could go and do anything I want, which means I'm back in here doing some work. So today's podcast guest is Linda Cronin, and our conversation is going to be based around kids kids and trauma. Mainly, we're going to talk about foster children and adopted children. Now, Linda is an award winning photographer. She is a civil engineer by trade. She is what I would consider to be an entrepreneur. And she is an inventor of an interactive therapeutic game as well as a board game. So, if you're ready, like, subscribe, follow, and tell everybody about this podcast, and they can watch it or listen to it wherever it's available. All right, now let's get right into it. Let's go. You really focus in on um, adopted children. Is that more? Can I say that, or it's children in general? But you have adopted a couple children, right?
Yes.
Um,
So the reason this all started was because of my two adopted children. So I am a civil engineer by trade. I come from a family of engineers and physicists and math teachers. So being a civil engineer was pretty natural. So when I adopted the children, though, back in 2008, we got them home, not without a lot of trauma. A lot of issues with Guatemala. Our facilitator was featured on Dateline, etc., and getting them out of there was rough. But we soon found out that they had mental health issues. Of course, you give adopted kids. They were 1 and 2 years old, and they just hand them to you and say, "Here." I was like, "What? What do they eat? What do they drink? What?" And they just no information whatsoever. So we had to figure it out on the fly. And
yeah.
probably about a year after we got them home, we realized that this wasn't right anymore. And Tufts Floating Hospital for Children had an international adoption clinic, and we took them there. Soon found out they were diagnosed with a multitude of mental health issues. The biggest one being reactive attachment disorder. We call it RAD. It is now called developmental disorder, things like that. But it's basically when the children were so either neglected or abused, or by neglected, it could have just been left alone too much. They didn't get their needs met, so they didn't develop those healthy attachments that a neurotypical child would get. Nobody held them,
Mhm.
stared into their eyes, gave them that safety. So their brains were like boom, 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 boom. When am I going to get fed next? When am I going to get my diaper changed? So they're always on heightened alert. So they couldn't. They couldn't attach. Their first caregivers did not, give them what they needed. At the same time, because they were such on heightened alert, when am I going to get my needs met? They develop sensory problems because they're not in tune with their environment. They're just so in survival mode that they don't get that normal, oh, a nice cooing sound, or this sight looks nice. So they don't develop those sensory,
Mhm.
they develop sensory problems actually. So
Uh,
um,
can you again tell us what RAD stands for?
that is reactive attachment disorder.
So
And
when
they've come to.
I was going to say, so
Mhm.
when we hear reactive attachment disorder, and you're talking about, it's there is the part of the mental disorders that started with the children was because they were not paid attention to, and it was maybe, if we call it neglect, or inadvertently being neglected because they just weren't getting that love. But now they're getting that from you, which they confuses them. Is that correct? Is that how we could look at that? As possibly?
Yes, actually, it confuses them. It scares them.
Mm-hmm.
So they actually, the usually the mother figure, because the mother is supposed to be the nurturer. So even if the father was the abuser or the neglect or whatever, the mother figure is the one that gets the brunt of, it's a push pull. They want to bond with you, they want safety, but they're so scared that when they get too close, they push away with their behaviors. And
Okay.
even as little babies, they innately do that. It's a defense mechanism that doesn't serve them well in the long run, though.
Okay, that's yeah. It's so odd to hear that because of the fact that you think, well, I'm giving that love to the child, so why is my adopted child reacting that way to me? What's wrong with you? What's wrong with you? And there's something is, but parents, the adopted parents, just don't know.
Yep, they think if I just love them enough, if I love them enough, they will be okay. But that's not when you parent children from hard places. And that's why I include foster kids, because foster kids, they have a
Yes.
really hard time. I mean, they get moved from family to family, and they never really can attach. So all of these kids are basically allergic to love. They're allergic to happiness because they're so deathly afraid that, for me, I will leave them. That's too hard for them to deal with. So I'm going to quit before you fire me. I'm going to push you away before you leave me. So that's what they do. And it takes a lot of work to get them. And some kids can never get there, but we know that the brain is neuroplastic, and there are things that we can do to help them rewire their brain to accept love. And it is very slow and very hard to do that, but it's doable.
So if it's doable, I guess before I jump into really wanting to know how or to begin, like you said, you started this journey because of your two adopted children from Guatemala.
Yes.
Um, how did this might sound funny, but not the why did you get into it because we already established why. But how is it that you really decided to dive deep into this? Because, like you said, your family were engineers, you're a civil engineer, and then all of a sudden you made this, I'm going to say, a 270-degree turn. I mean, it's just like it's completely opposite, but yeah, I'm sure you brought some of the skills that you learned at some of your other things almost back around into it. So, why was it so important? I mean, for you to help others.
Okay, so for the first, excuse me, approximately 7 years or so, we had a therapist who did things an old school way. Basically, the philosophy before was that the kids need to be in control, and that's why they're doing what they're doing. It's really not, but so then they teach the parents to be in control of the children at all times. And that is a very wrong philosophy because that's not actually what's happening. The kids are scared to death. They have very low self esteem, self worth. And that's what's going on. They want to stay in control at all costs because they feel like if they don't stay in control, then they will die. They will lose their whatever. This could be serious for them. So my kids weren't really making any progress. And eventually, in 2017, we had a pretty serious crisis. And through that, we met our attachment therapist now. He's a world renowned attachment therapist. And now, that was 6 years ago. He has taught me and the kids everything that I know now, that for attachment challenged children from trauma backgrounds. It doesn't have to be attachment challenged, just anybody from trauma backgrounds. And so when I started with him, the insurance companies were giving us a hard time nonstop. Sometimes they pay for it, sometimes they wouldn't. I found treatments out there like wilderness therapy, therapeutic boarding schools, intensive camps, things like that, that could really help my children, but insurance wouldn't pay for them. I couldn't afford it, and it was so hard. It's so hard. It's very hard to. I know they're struggling. I know they're languishing. Then they may not make it in society, and I can't get them the help that they need. And there is help out there, and that was the hardest. It's still hard. It's still hard because they need the help that I can't get them yet. I've had to become that therapeutic parent. As a civil engineer, feelings and things really weren't my thing. Numbers, they're easy. I get 2 + 2 is 4. It's never 6. It's never 10. And feelings, excuse me, feelings can be difficult because sometimes a feeling comes from a place where it doesn't even match what happened, so you have to dig deeper. So at the end of the day, I realized that I'm going to have to be the one to teach my kids, help them change their brains, along with the minimal therapy that we're allowed to have by insurance. And then I was like, if we need to get to these kids younger, if we can get to them at a very young age, and this is all kids, adopted kids, foster kids, and normal, I shouldn't say normal because it's neurotypical children, but this can all help them. So verbalizing their feelings. This is one thing that kids with the mental health issues have a hard time with. My kids cannot verbalize their feelings. So at 16 and 17, they will still actually throw tantrums. They look a little different than a toddler tantrum, but they're tantrums nonetheless. And then when we've calmed down and discussed it, say what happened, and then she's, oh, I was feeling, this. And can we start telling me how you feel before we do the behaviors that are causing a lot of grief and chaos in the household, and a lot of dangerous behaviors with kids that start getting into their tweens and teens. The dangerous behaviors are, in order to numb their pain, because they're not talking about it, they'll go to drugs. They'll go to online, very dangerous behaviors. They'll, video games, just anything that can numb that pain so they don't have to deal with it. And those can lead to very bad situations.
I would imagine too that this does this cause social disconnect, if that makes sense, where they alienate themselves and they stick to themselves, whether they're child, or, young or tweens or anything like that.
So it can actually do both. So some kids are going to go and outwardly, maybe they'll be pests. They'll want the kids. I want to play with you. I want to play with you. I want to be near you. I want to be with you. And then they become pests to the other children because they're so desperate for belonging and to not be lonely and not be left behind. But then you could have the other side, the other spectrum too, is where kids could just numb out and be like, whatever, I'm lonely. It doesn't matter. I don't care. And shut down. So the only problem is there's no happy medium unless they have a healthy relationship and a healthy attitude.
Not only is this difficult for the children, but this definitely sounds difficult for the adult, for the parents, because like you said, there's no happy mediums. It sounds like to me then one day they could be, stay away kind of thing. The next day you see them with other children or even the adult. They want you, and it's got to be difficult. Focusing just a moment on the parent. What should the parent's behavior be? How should the parent react or be towards that child?
Okay, so I can tell you exactly how the parent should be, and that is way easier said than done, of course. Yeah. So, parents being the adult in the situation and knowing, I don't want to say better, but knowing, right? They should, in the face of the chaos, the dysregulation, they should be calm. And they should, listen to the child, hear the child, just sit with them if that's what's necessary. I have a whole lot of things that can be done. The only problem is so parents, they work, they're not around all the time, take them home from work, they're tired, they need to get the dinner on the table. Of course, everything gets in the way. And also, parents come from all of us have had some kind of trauma in our life, some kind of triggering. So the kid's behavior can be very triggering and just blows your mind, and then you do not react in that healthy way that you would like to. Now, even given the fact that you could do that all the time, that doesn't necessarily mean that your kids are going to be perfectly healthy, because, the mental health issues I believe there's a lot of these kids, they need a specialized therapist, of course, to deal with it. But then the parent can obviously, there's lots of things you can do. I don't do it all myself very well at times. So the behaviors that come out, especially with tweens and teens, they lie. They're so deathly afraid to tell the truth because they don't want to hear no, or they don't want to get in trouble. So they lie. They'll steal. Instead of asking for money to buy some snacks because the other kids have them or whatever it is, they'll steal the money out of your pocketbook. And as they get older, they'll steal the money to buy the drugs, cigarettes, vapes, all kinds of things, etc. They're very rude and disrespectful at times because that's that pushing.
Yeah.
And I found the behaviors will escalate. Like if we have a good time, like if we go celebrate their birthday the next day and the next 2 days, they're very dysregulated. They will push to no end because, oh no, I got too close. They can't have that. I'm too scared. And then they push. And those behaviors are hard, and it's hard to keep them safe. And it's really hard to stay calm in the face of, swearing at you, yelling, I hate you, and throwing these massive tantrums. They're very hard. I am still in the process of learning how to do that. So,
And I guess for the parents that or adults who are listening, it is not a process that's going to be fixed overnight. And like you're saying, it may not ever get fixed. It's probably always going to be there in the child, and there may be triggers down the road where the parent and child, even if they're possibly in their 20s or 30s, something might happen. So I guess we all need to maybe step back if that happens, and if you know your child is going through those difficulties. So if the parent of an adopted or foster child doesn't know, um, what is it that what type of signs can they look for that may help them understand that this is possibly what the child is going through?
so first thing is that when a child is tantruming or dysregulated, they are in fight or flight. They're working
Okay.
out of their survival brain in the back of their head. And it shuts off everything else. It shuts off their neocortex, which is their thinking brain. It shuts off their digestive system. Their heart rate increases. It shuts off everything that's not needed for survival. So trying to reason with them or talk to them in that moment is going to get you nowhere, and it's going to get you more frustrated than anything. So what you need to do is try to calm them down first. If that means a time in, so if it's a younger child, even with older children, so for the attachment challenge children, don't send them to their room because being alone is really bad for them. That's what their defense mechanism does. They don't want to be alone, but their behavior makes you want them to be alone. So it's a time in. We say, sit next to me on the floor, crisscross applesauce, you know, I'm here with you. I don't like your behavior right now, but we need, I'm here. I'm not going anywhere. And then, it depends on the child, of course, or what the tantrum was. Maybe you touch their shoulder. Some kids, adopted or foster kids, don't want touch, so it's just being there with them. Kids who do, you could give them a hug. You could give them, and nobody wants to pick up a screaming child and give them a hug, but sometimes that's exactly what they need. They need that pressure, that hug, just, you're safe, you know. Um, just sitting with them, verbal acknowledgments. I'm here. I hear you. Let's try to take some deep breaths. Let's try some humming, things that will stimulate their vagus nerve that can get them out of fight or flight. Sometimes a silly song, a joke, humor can sometimes work really well. It's not going to work every time. You can't do it every time and expect it to, but sometimes you get prescribed the behavior. If they're throwing a tantrum, you flop around on the floor like a fish out of water, and that'll get them laughing. So there's a lot of little
Okay.
things that you can do. And then once they are calm, then you can start discussing with them, whatever the incident was. Find out what's underneath them. So anger and frustration has, which my kids therapist teaches us, is it has three feelings. You can always boil almost everything down to this. It's either sad, scared, or shame. And shame is where you don't feel worthy. It's not like you're ashamed of something that you did wrong. It's you are bad. You are wrong. And these kids, a lot of them feel this shame. So you take anything, let's like some typical tantruming behavior, and you can boil it down to that. If you think about any time you are dysregulated or anything, you can boil it down to that. So I get angry at my daughter because she's doing dangerous things online. I get angry at her, and then I realize when I've calmed down, like, I was scared. I was scared to death. The behavior that she's doing is so dangerous for her, and it's dangerous for our family. She's giving these guys our home phone number, our address, and these
Mm-hmm.
are very dangerous behaviors. But I boil it down. I'm scared. I'm scared for her future. I'm scared for our family and for her. So you can always boil it down to those three things.
Okay. Uh, you know, the time in. So, like you said, sometimes you sit there and maybe you'll touch them lightly or you'll verbalize with them or whatever it might be. I know some parents or many parents, it's difficult for them to do that because now the child's triggered anger, frustration in the parent.
Hmm.
The time in, can you use something like the child sit next to you, turn the TV on to watch a movie or something, just to get them to focus on something else, and the parent as well. Now you're
Hmm.
watching the show together. It might be a funny one, and then 10 minutes into it, you could turn and say, "Wasn't that funny?" Or what'd you think about that? And then go into discussion about, so why were you behaving that way? Could that be a possibility of doing something like that? Just so
Sure.
both people ease into it?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. Anything that you could do together like that. So, yeah, that could totally work. I've actually, when parents get frustrated, they do like to turn on the TV. So but at the same time, yes, you get that separation, you get that reset. So they're happy in front of their cartoons or whatever, and you get the chance to breathe and calm down because when you're in fight or flight, you're not going to react well. So then, and I know this, I've lost it, right? Of course, everybody's lost it with their kids.
Yeah.
And 5 minutes later, after I've removed myself and sat down, like, oh, geez, I did it again. I lost it. And, so everybody's human. Nobody is faulting anybody for losing it. We all, there was a statistic that said that 95% of parents had yelled at their children. I'm telling you that the other 5% were lying. Okay, that's
Yeah,
all. Everybody
right.
has lied, has yelled at their children. So
uh, so this is a
anything,
perfect time.
anything you can think of to do it, even if it's, yeah, telling them a joke or tickling them or picking up and hugging them, anything that can throw them off guard and get them out of that fight or flight. So
Okay.
there are things like, humming. So humming will stimulate the vagus nerve that, signals the body to start calming down. Deep breaths, deep belly breaths will get oxytocin flowing into your system instead of the cortisol that is flowing when you're all in chaos.
Mm, okay. Definitely a lot of good tips. So, uh, do you have a website? I asked that, but I know.
I
So,
do.
where would folks go to find out some more information and, see the different books and things like that and learn a little bit more about you? And you also had an illustrator that worked on at least a book of yours.
Hmm.
So,
Yep.
where would folks go?
Well, so Positopia World, this book is for children about 4 to 8 years old, and I did this because, and my illustrator is amazing. Like, this is,
Yeah.
I just love his illustrations. In the book, Jack is a little boy whose engine runs red, yellow, or green. And that's why I wanted to simplify, so you can simplify a child's emotions, even if they're pre-verbal, even if they're autistic and are nonverbal. So when they're red, they're scared, they're angry, they're terrified, they're out of control. When they're yellow, they're a little worried. They're either getting jacked up, or they're starting to come down. They're worried, nervous, and when they're green, they're happy and calm. So I did that so that it's very easy for a kid to say red. I'm red, I'm yellow, I'm green instead. And what I did was, though, they have an aura around them. So Jack's taking a test and he's worried, so his aura is yellow. I've had kids as young as 2 point to the red aura and say, mad. And I was very surprised that they could pick that up at such a young age. So that's what the book is, and it's fun and adventurous, so the kids don't know they're learning it. That's the best part. So my website is www.positopiaworld.com, and it's Positopia, positopiaworld.com. I do have a second book coming out, and this is it's about the three-headed dragon. I just said to you that unpacking the anger is sad, scared, or shame. So the three-headed dragon is, each head is one of those emotions: sad, scared, or shame. And then they go through and they figure that all out. So
Wow. That's pretty incredible. I mean, as far as the books go and how you relate the books to what the children are going through. So, yeah, people go to the website definitely, and I'll make sure that we have that in the show notes as well. Uh, there are a couple of other things with this, because like you said, goes for mainly adoptive children, foster children, but all children. And all children meaning that you don't have. I'm thinking that you don't have to have had any type of trauma, but maybe you did have trauma. But children go through a lot at a young age, and like I said in the very beginning, with adopted foster children, uh, they're bombarded with so many different things that they can't make sense of it. And again, I don't want to use the word normal or regular, but
Right.
the other children out
Neurotypical.
there, they're going to go through the same possible emotions. So these books are great for everyone, and they're fantastic for parents, adults, because it lets them understand what the child is going through. So through a child's eye, at least that's what I see when I see the pages of the book. So, um,
Absolutely, it's good for neurotypical children because if we can teach young children to verbalize their feelings and then use simple self regulation techniques, I mean, there are so many amazing benefits. I mean, they'll be able to connect better with others, of course, right? They'll gain coping skills in new and dysregulated situations. They'll become more resilient. They gain self confidence. And if they can start to understand the feelings of other children too, there could be less bullying. They'll gain empathy and compassion. That can go for inclusion and diversity because they'll be able to understand somebody else's perspective, knowing that's a person with feelings just like me.
hmm
There are just so many benefits of teaching them to verbalize their emotions. Now, most kids, I'm going to say, have had some kind of trauma, even because the boogeyman at night. They don't know it's not real. They internalize that. That's a little bit of a trauma for them. So, because at their age, they don't know how to process that. So, that being in a little car accident could be the trauma trigger that at 3 years old that scared them. Now they see that blue truck and that scares them. They don't know why. They're pre-verbal. So these it can be anything that when such a young age they can't deal with it, they internalize it and it doesn't come out until, maybe they're older, but
yeah. Using the colors, your red, yellow, green was yeah.
yeah.
It's I can see how that helps even with. Uh, I forgot the term that we want to use. The
Autistic or
Oh
nonverbal.
no, I was gonna say the regular children, the
Oh.
non-neural, you know,
The neurotypical children. Yeah.
neurotypical children, where they can use those colors to let mom, dad know how they're feeling, even if they don't exactly know. No,
Hmm.
the angry, red, yellow.
Yep.
I'm coming down, but they may be able to. You may be able to interpret it a different way. Where okay, he or she's feeling a little bit scared or a little bit something, and not all the way. So I could see where to help that way. Now, a comment is, I don't see a degree on here for you about neuroscience, but you
You don't see a degree.
definitely
I
no.
do have a degree in physiological psychology with a minor in neuroscience.
Okay.
I was going to be a veterinarian when I went through school, but that didn't work out because I was just too sad about all the animals that were hurt and dying.
Yeah.
So I do, but also just from I've gone to a million conferences and seminars and webinars, and I've read a million books. And my children's therapist is amazing, and he's taught me a lot. So, and I live it every day, all day,
hmm
with other parents, and we have parent groups and support groups, and.
I only made that comment because yes, you have a definite skill set and knowledge about this, and I just want folks to know that yeah, somebody that you're listening to right now that I'm having a conversation with is somebody in the know. Not only have you studied, you've experienced it, and you are still going through it. So,
Yes.
uh, what is this thing about belly
Absolutely.
breathing? I'm
Belly
thinking
laughs are
laugh
great
and making a.
too.
Yeah, right. You're gonna have that breathing if you're laughing in the belly. So what is the belly breathing?
Okay, so you want to have the children either you can lie on the floor or just put their hands on their belly. You want to fill up your belly. When you fill up your chest, that's what happens when you're in fight or flight. You do shallow breathing into your chest. So when you take big breaths in and blow up your stomach like a balloon, and then let it out very slowly and deflate it like a balloon is deflating. And you do them very slowly, like 4 counts in, hold, 7 counts out, hold, because that signals to the brain that it secretes oxytocin, signals the brain that you're calm. Your heart not beating fast, you're not breathing shallow, you purposely breathing deep, and the body goes and the brain goes, oh, we're okay, we're calm, we're calming. And so it brings on those oxytocin, which is the love hormone, but it's the happy hormone, and gets rid of the cortisol, which is your chaos and your stress hormone. So the belly
So
breathing, it also is described in my book, and it's very good for children to learn that.
I was going to say, as far as that learning part, this is something, at least the way I'm thinking, is definitely you want to teach it and do it before they get into that fight or flight mode. So I would see where if that begins, you don't even have to speak to the child. It's a signal like, okay, and you lay down and you
You don't have
begin
to lie
and
down, but you don't have to lie down. You can do it sitting up, but
sitting
yeah.
up. So, but I definitely see where this is something that you want to do before any of that stuff begins. So they know, okay, mom is signaling. I guess I'm going through this situation and this is going to help. So, you know, so
Yep.
a
So
lot of
they could
good
do it
things.
throughout the day too. If even
Mm-hmm.
when they're regulated, just say, let's
Mm-hmm.
practice 10 deep belly breaths, because that will secrete the oxytocin and help with their calming. So then it'll become a habit. It could become something that immediately would know to do when they're dysregulated, you know?
Yes. Yeah. Like I said, they become aware, and then we've heard the saying as adults: take 3 deep breaths.
Mhm.
Yeah. So this is basically the same thing you're teaching your child, and that child's going to understand and know I'm going through this situation, even if the parent's not there. And now, even if they're teens, tweens, whatever, they know, okay, I need to chill and take those deep breaths. So, again, there's
Yes.
a lot of different things that your book, your website, everything's going to help parents and help these children. So, I suggest everybody go there.
Great.
Pick up the book too.
Thank you.
Uh, Linda, was there anything else that you really want to talk about as far as helping the parents, helping the child or children?
One more thing, though, that
Mm-hmm.
speaking of verbalizing their feelings, every emotion is okay and it's good. It's how you react to that emotion that matters. So we don't want parents to dismiss the feeling as, no, you shouldn't feel like that. We want them to acknowledge it, validate it, and then, discuss why that happened, or, try to unpack that. But they just want to be seen and heard and validated. That will make them feel safe. And that can also minimize the, tantrums and the disruptive behavior in the future, because if they know they're going to be heard and seen and really validated, they're going to be less likely to feel the need to throw those, I'm going to say, attention seeking behaviors, but they're really connection seeking behaviors. So they'll be less likely to feel the need to do that. Instinctively, they'll be able to speak and say, of course, it's going to take some time right away. And there's always, toddlers, you gave them the red cup instead of the blue cup. I mean, you're not going to, they're still finding their way. So that's not going to decrease all of those tantrums. But certainly when kids start getting older, if they make these habits, then, you're going to see less disruptive behavior.
And I'm going to assume that as the child grows and gets a little bit older and gets into that 10, 11, 12, they understand a little bit more, which also, to me, I think parents would have to be very cautious about this, meaning that don't get into that argument verbalizing back and forth, which is a difficult thing to do, because now that child is at that age where they are going to say those angry and mean, hateful things. And if they do, don't argue with them and don't take it personal. It don't.
Mm.
It,
That's a
easier
big
said than
one.
done, right?
That's a big one. Easier said than done for sure, but don't take it personal. It's not you, it's them. It's a feeling that's in them, that if you can unpack that. But what I had this visualization when my son was swearing at me and slamming the door in my face, was that he had this ball of garbage that was in his body. He needed to get it out. He didn't know how. He was throwing that at me. I didn't have
Hmm.
to catch it. I could step aside. I could put in my pocket to help him unpack it later, but I didn't have to accept his ball of garbage. I was there to help him unpack that. Again, yes, easier said than done, but maybe if you think about it, like they're throwing their ball of garbage, they're just trying to get rid of it. They need your help to do that.
That's a that's a beautiful way to think about it. Is that way? And I don't know if "beautiful" is the right choice of words, but I mean that is a good way of putting it for the parents to understand. And my last comment again is for the parents, and all this is easier said than done. It's not an overnight. There's not an overnight cure or fix to any of this. So parents have to do their due diligence and their work to work with themselves within themselves to understand that child, and once again to not take it personal.
Yes.
Uh, but this has been great.
Thank you.
I don't have any children, but I definitely have a lot of ammunition now. If I have any
Yep.
friends, children who have kids and they're going through things, I could whisper in their ear, "Hey," you know.
Yep.
So, Linda, thank you very much for your time today.
Thank you very much. This has been great.
Yeah.